Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Junk Raider podcast. And today we are going to be talking about a really exciting topic, one that we've spent a lot of time talking about, and one where our position has changed pretty dramatically over the years. When we think about our position on this, our answer to this question a year ago, 5 years ago, very different than it would be today. So today we're diving into the topic of what is the ideal employee in the junk removal industry. So with that said, Davis, tell me, what are your thoughts on the ideal employee today? And then we can talk about how that contrasts with the way we used to think about it.
Well, I think we can obviously talk about it from like a general sense, like what do you look for culture wise? There's obviously different roles in the organization. I think for you and I specifically, what prompted us to do this episode was what type of employee do you want on the truck in the field? Because you're obviously going to have people in your call center, you're going to have bookkeepers and accountants and admins, depending on the size of your business. But for us, I think you want to focus on just the field team for this episode.
Yeah, specifically for your field team employees.
Yeah, I think for me, I've had some enlightening moments, if you will, the last, few months of really, when you get to a certain level, I don't know if it's just unique to our own business, but this is probably true for everybody else. Like you go so hard in the beginning to get to a certain level of revenue. And then like you're met with these roadblocks of like, how do you scale to the next level? And that's kind of where we're at. And so you think about things or you don't think about things at different levels. And for me, our viewpoint back in 2018 when we started relative to our field team members and who was going to go out and do the jobs was like, oh, we need strong, able-bodied people, good customer service, people that are friendly, clean cut, that sort of thing. And I think that evolved a little bit naturally, but also because we proactively decided to put more focus on it we need people really know how to like operationally help run a truck or the business better. Like, not just can you pick up a couch and put it in the truck, but like, can you look at a schedule that has 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 jobs on it for the day and strategically map that out? Like, don't just follow because it's chronologically laid out from this one goes at 9 a.m., this one at 10, this at 11. If there's shuffling that needs to be done because it would optimize your route, can you think outside the box in that scenario? And that's the type of, employee that we were kind of maybe changed gears on a little bit and started looking for. If you fast forward to today, what I really think this type of business needs most from field team members is, I sum it up as like, it needs salespeople that just happen to be okay hauling junk. Like a lot of people out there can physically pick up things and put it in a truck. So like, yeah, you can go out and hire people to be on your truck pretty easily in this industry. You want to pay them $15 an hour, $20 an hour, $30 an hour, whatever, depending on your market. Great. Go hire. You can hire quickly. You're obviously going to have a lot of attrition in this industry and kind of with that model. So I think for me, the mindset shift has been like, I don't want to label and I don't really want to position the company in the marketplace when we do need to go hire because we're expanding or we lost somebody. I don't want to position the company as we're just looking for laborers. Like, I'm actually looking for a salesperson. And I come from a sales background. And so I have this vision in my head of like what the job recs can and should look like moving forward. And that's geared way more towards the customer service and sales side of the job than it is towards, you need to be able to lift 50 pounds and you need to be able to, have a clean driving record. And you need to be able to fill up a gas tank. All that's like default. Yeah, we're going to check the box on that and make sure we're not hiring, a 5-year-old. But what I'm really looking for is like, who has the itch to really go and capture as much revenue as possible. And you find that type of characteristic most often in somebody that has that sales gene in them and who's driven by, I'm trying to crush it today. Like, our truck did $1,000 yesterday. I want to like, we should be doing $2,000 plus. Like, that really upsets me. What can I do? I've got 4 jobs here. Maybe they'll get us to $2,000, but I'm going to, do my darndest to get at the highest average ticket price for all of these. I'm going to try and take on as many jobs as the call center brings in. I'm going to go drop into places. I'm going to follow up with past customers. Like, you can only coach so much. Most of that lives naturally in some people or it doesn't. And I think we have, here probably maybe one person where that is kind of like a natural thing, but even that person, I don't think is really a natural born salesperson like I'm talking about. And so, if you fast forward a year or 3 years or 5 years, and we look back at the team we have here in Charlotte, and we have 5 or 10 people out on the road, 15 people, if we get to that size in this one location, I would love for 75 to 80% of those people to be like really driven by sales. And obviously you back into comp plans and incentives that help drive that action and make it really exciting. But I think that's what also, not to take up the entire segment here, but like that's also what makes the job more fun. Like if you're just part of a team where all of you just kind of show up every day and you work whatever's on the schedule and you know you just got to get it done between 9 and 5 and you're out on the road, you got some freedom, like you're not really held to a certain standard to like help drive revenue or create more leads or anything, then it's just kind of boring in my opinion. Like I wouldn't want to show up every day if I was on the truck in that kind of culture. Like, yeah, I'm just here to do a job and collect the paycheck and then go home. Like I want the type of culture that's like there's a sense of urgency. Like we're on this job. I want to get it done as quickly and efficiently as possible. Make the customer happy, but I want to get off this job as quickly as possible so I can get back in the truck, start texting past customers, following up on estimates, get to the next job, pack my schedule as much as possible so that I can potentially hit these threshold tiers that the management has set out for incentive bonuses, but also get more jobs in the book so I can get more tips, right? That's the culture that I think is more fun for most folks to show up and work in every day. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, no, that there's a lot to that. I think in our early days, really for the first 5+ years, it was really almost exclusively focused on, we want guys that can work hard, have a great attitude. We want guys that are good communicators, good with customers, good for the culture that we have established and want to continue to build on, and are full of integrity. Those are, I think, the main things that we focused on. But there wasn't a ton of emphasis, in fact, very little on we want salespeople. And part of that was by design because we didn't want these aggressive salespeople coming to someone's house and just making them feel uncomfortable. You didn't bring a salesperson here. You brought a junk removal company here to help you out. But I do think it's become more apparent that there is a balance there. You do want guys and girls that are very comfortable in a sales capacity. And some of the things that I think about is just the need to explain services, for example, is really important. And that's something that often gets overlooked is, okay, this person's a hard worker. This person maybe has, good appearance, but how are they in terms of their ability to articulate and explain the services that we offer and how we charge for those services, which may sound, okay, that's simple, but it's amazing how almost 6.5 years in, there are still times where our guys fumble the pricing for if it's hourly labor as an example, or if we're having to bag and sometimes forget, hey, we don't want you, if it's a big job, we don't want you quoting that job. You want to bring that back to us and let us handle that. So I think from a sales standpoint, that's one of the benefits of hiring people that have a sales background, have that mindset, is they're used to that. They're used to having the ability to communicate very clearly, not just here's the price, here's the service, here's the product, but here's the why. People want that why, and having the ability to clearly communicate is very important. Also the upsell, being able to upsell is really important because we hear more and more about the average job size and why it's so important to track that. And if you're a junk removal business owner, manager, even employee, and you're not really tracking your average job size, huge mistake. You need to be tracking that. And a simple way that you can increase that is your guys in the field that are looking around, constantly scanning and looking for opportunities to upsell. Hey, Mr. Customer, I noticed you've got that refrigerator. It looks pretty beat up. We're happy to take that off your hands. How many times have we had that happen and the customer goes, oh, I didn't know you could do that? More times than we can count. Just teaching your people to be really aware of those kind of opportunities. And then lastly, as a sales rep, building trust, being able to build rapport. That's where having a sales background is so important because they understand that leads to those repeat businesses, the referrals that we're all after, because there's no cost associated with that. Google ads, LSAs, even if you have an SEO agency, those things all cost money. Facebook ads, it's free to simply have that repeat customer come back to you again and again. So having people that have that sales background, they understand that instinctively because they've been through those trenches, they understand it. So that's an area where I feel like we should have done a better job day one, is not, hey, we want you guys to be used car salesmen, but we do want you to sell. We want you to know how to sell. And there's going to be training on that. There's going to be emphasis on that because it all comes down to how well can you articulate who we are, our services, our pricing, why you should go with us, etc. Over to you.
Sorry, you froze there for a split second. 3 things I would touch on. One, like generally speaking, at least from our angle, like you're trying to multiply yourself as the owner. Like you and I see this business differently than our guys do, and as we should, and as they should. Like the old saying, like you can have great employees, but they're never going to care about your business like you do as the owner, which is fine. There should be that delineation. You can't expect somebody to care about your baby like you do, but you do want to try to multiply yourself as much as possible. And if we're being honest, any business, but especially in junk removal, because it's so transactional, it's so ebb and flow. Like we had an $800 day the other day, and you and I are sitting here kind of secretly freaking out because it's just like, what's going on with that day? Like, why are we having that kind of we're not used to that. Yeah. And we're all thinking sales, where our guys naturally aren't thinking sales. They get their paycheck every 2 weeks. They were out on the road and they were busy all day. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily looking at that number thinking, oh my God, like this is not good for our business to be at this level of revenue. Like, so you're just trying to multiply yourself. And that's where the sales lens, to me, if you can start to hire for that and or coach and teach your existing employees for that. And that goes all the way to like the call center people, really anybody in the org, because junk removal is I don't want to call it such a unique business, but it's very apparent that there's so many avenues for you to gain a customer in junk removal. Like if you're selling IT services, you have usually a pretty specific niche of client, like how many people work at the company, their revenue, and the industry they're in, right? You may focus only on $50 million companies that have 100 people or less in the organization that are US based and that specifically service, like the retail industry, and you're trying to provide your IT services to them. Like that's very niche and a very select few people. In junk removal, it's everywhere, literally everywhere. You've got referral partners, you've obviously got direct customers, both on the residential side and the commercial side. And so anybody in your organization should always be thinking about, how can I help to generate leads and top line revenue, especially in today's world where the marketing spend is so expensive. Like to your point, repeat customers are great. You've already paid for the lead to come back around. You didn't necessarily pay for that lead again, but there's so many avenues. And we've uncovered some here recently that are like, they're also quote unquote free avenues if you can get a lead from them, where you don't have to rely on Google so much. You and I are only 2 people. Like if we can multiply ourselves times 5 or times 10, and those people, maybe even if they only have like a 5% type of motive that we do, it's still more than nothing. And so if we can get our guys in the field thinking through that lens, our call center people, like, okay, we've had 30 calls today, but I've had 2 hours of downtime. Like, what could I have been doing with that downtime? Like, if we can get people to more naturally think that way and be like, all right, let me go outbound, start prospecting, then it's going to be a positive. But to come back around to my first point. So you jarred my memory with the average job size and just how guys in the field think about these things sometimes, or they don't. We had a recent example where I think we went on site and the volume was like a $650 volume job. Like the items, if we loaded them up right then, they would take up about $650 worth of space in our truck. Well, our guy in the field, and this was just an on-site estimate to then get the job booked for the next Monday, I think, went in with like a $450 to $550 price to the customer, which if you're in the field and you're not the business owner, you look at that as like, yeah, I discounted it, but I locked in the job. Like we're going to get this revenue. From my angle, if you look at it, I go into the system all the time in those scenarios and I look at the notes of what they put in there, like how many trucks, how many guys, how long are we going to be on that job? What types of items are they? Is it just standard household or is it demo debris? And I start to back into like, does that actually make sense for us to price it that way? And yes, you never want to walk away from a job without collecting revenue, but like there's strategic ways in those scenarios where you can be in the field and talk through, to your point, with customers about the service you're providing and be at certain price points. We'll come to find out, right? Like after I backed into those numbers, our guy in the field just took it upon himself to give an over 15% discount. I forgot how the math worked out, but it was like, he just went out on a whim and gave a 15 or 20% discount on this job. And I was like, guys, we don't have 15 to 20% margin to play with here. You now just committed us to a 2-hour time slot, likely, for a job that's going to make us no money, where we could have respectfully passed on it, or given them our the rate we needed to be at. And if they decided to pass on it, fine. But we could have moved another customer into that job slot that would have actually made us money, made us profit, versus now committing us to this job just because you thought we needed to get it on the books. And while I'm appreciative, obviously, in those scenarios of the guys thinking about revenue and just trying to lock in as many jobs as possible, they don't think through that lens strategically of like, whoa, let me slow down. Like, how much discount am I thinking about giving? And that's not to get super granular here, but that's a way you can speak to a client in the field. If you're like, hey, this is a $650 volume job, and that initial feedback, assuming they're in front of you, is like, whoa, we weren't looking to spend more than 400 or whatever that is. You can kind of go in with like an undertone of like, oh, 400, like, so you're expecting like you were thinking maybe a 25 to 35% discount off of our pricing, right? And the client's not thinking that way. But as soon as they hear, whoa, I'm asking for a large discount here, then the conversation maybe changes a little bit and you can get them back up to where you need to be for that job to make sense. And we're not saying like don't discount the field to lock in jobs. We're all about, we've already spent the marketing dollars to get this lead. We've already got a team on site. We've already put a truck out there and guys on payroll. Like, we spent money to be there. The worst thing right now is for us to walk away with no revenue. But the even worse thing is to walk away with less revenue than what we need for the amount of stuff we took away. No problem getting the revenue for what they want to pay, but only take away the amount of stuff that ties to that revenue. So maybe you only take away $400 worth of stuff. They still have stuff left over because they couldn't, didn't have the budget for it at that time. But those are just some things for me, like with the mindset of it's really difficult to coach and train and help employees evolve to that type of level of thinking. It's way easier if you can hire for it initially. It's like drafting LeBron James and trying to get him better versus the guy who's never played basketball before, but he's somewhat athletic and works hard, but like he's never played basketball. It's like he's just not thinking through the same lens that LeBron is. And so the level of output's going to be different. So that's all. I mean, last thing I'll say is there's so many to the point of just different avenues where junk can be found. Like, there's things that I've thought about in the past, but my memory will get jarred. Like, one recently was 2 days ago. I think it was on a Facebook group. Maybe somebody mentioned something about furniture stores. I was like, oh yeah, totally forgot about that. Like, that avenue. Like, we're all the time prospecting different places, but I was like, furniture stores. Why haven't we gone back to those people in the past? Like Costco returns, or just going to places like Goodwill that have just this stuff is everywhere. 9 times out of 10, you might get told to buzz off. Like, no, we don't pay for that type of service, but you just need one to hit every so often to become a nice customer, typically a corporate customer. And then it changes your business. And again, if you multiply yourselves and you get 5 or 10 people out there in the field or in your call center making those types of touches and generating those types of leads, your top line will increase and your bottom line will decrease. And that's obviously what every business owner is trying to get to.
Yeah. No, you're right. In the interest of time, because it looks like we're coming up on 20 minutes already, and our topic is really about what is the ideal employee. I'm going to go through my list very quickly here, and then over to you to kind of finish us off here. But the other things that I wrote down, Davis, was we tend to look for manual labor, but there's more to it than just someone that's physically strong. So you want people that also are smart enough to understand there's a safety component here that we want you to always have with you. Always be thinking of safety first. So that's what I wrote down is you want physical fitness, but you want safety awareness. You also want, in that same vein of manual labor, efficiency and speed. And this is a conversation you and I just had a few days ago, is when you look at your metrics, when you look at your guys and do a side-by-side comparison, and you see that the average, couch, love seat, side chair takes this employee from start to finish, from the time they hit start on the job to the time they are completely done, they're 20 minutes on the job. Versus these other guys average 9 minutes, or maybe this guy averages 40 minutes. The ability to be efficient, meaning you want to be friendly. We want you to do this as safely as you can. You need to be physically strong. That couch may be a sleeper sofa that needs to come down the stairs. All that's important. But what's also very important is that you're working efficiently, so that it's not taking you. Why does it take this person 9 minutes and everyone else takes 20 to 40 minutes? Why is that? We want you to talk and be friendly, but not too friendly, not too talkative, right? Be friendly, but not to where you're trying to set up your camping trip with that person by the time you leave. So that's the other balance that I wrote down. The other thing is driving skills is very important, because even if they're coming on as just a loader, you want to make sure that they have a clean, valid driver's license. And you need to absolutely stress the need that we are not looking for race car drivers. We are driving box trucks, sometimes full of construction debris, heavy furniture, could even be occasionally wood or bricks, which we don't want in our box trucks, but emergencies happen and you have to make it work. So you want to stress that as well. Also, everyone thinks navigational skills means just a GPS. Well, while that's true, but you do also want people that understand there's a safe way to do that. We don't want you on your phone typing in that address. So that's where it goes back again to, you want to hire intelligent people that aren't just taking orders and doing things without really stopping and thinking about the consequence. Also, when it comes to driving, you want to make sure that, believe it or not, that you are addressing this up front. When you are in the passenger seat, we don't want you sleeping. We want you to be productive. We don't want you napping in between jobs. We don't pay you to take naps, guys. Respectfully, it's not because we're mean and we're hardcore. It's none of those things. We understand. Now, if you had to work late for a junk rater job and then we asked you to be up early the next morning, we probably would give you a pass if we found out you dozed off. We don't want that to be a habitual thing, part of our culture, where some of our guys are just known for sleeping all the time. What can they be doing in the meantime? And this is where it's important, I think, to have these discussions before you hire. We want you to be calling and following up, on maybe previous quotes that we sent out. We want you to be thinking through the eyes of the business owner. We always try to emphasize that to our guys, is think like the owner. So what are productive things you can do? Every time I go out in the field with the guys just to do refresh, I always will let them drive because I want to see how they drive. Sometimes they behave because I'm in there. Other times they forget that it's me. But I show them, hey, when we have downtime, take the wipes and start cleaning off the dashboard. Start wiping down the seats. Anything that you can access that's dirty. Don't just waste your time. Use the time wisely while you're sitting in that passenger seat. Also, very important in the vein of driving is vehicle maintenance. Most of your employees tend to have this mindset that I'm not a mechanic, that's not my job. And while that may be true, we're not asking them to turn the wrench. What we do want them to understand, though, is maintaining the vehicle is everyone's responsibility. It's not Ted and Davis. It's not Eric. It's not Matt. It's everyone. And that includes the way you drive. So if you have a lead foot, let's find that out early as much as we can. And let's make sure that you understand it's not just that we're worried about speeding tickets. We're worried about accidents, even though we are. We're also concerned with the wear and tear on the vehicle. So if you are just hammering down every single time the light turns green, that makes a big difference on these trucks. If you are taking hard turns, if you're tailgating, all those things you want to discuss up front and make sure you're looking for employees that understand that vehicle maintenance is very important, because if that vehicle goes down and you don't have a backup, you might be in some real trouble. The last thing I'll talk about is soft skills. And that would be things like, are you hiring a team player or are you hiring a lone wolf? Are you hiring someone that's better off driving a UPS truck or a FedEx truck? Or are you hiring someone that likes having a team around them? They like coaching. They like being coached. They like mentoring and being mentored. Those are things that are really important to look for, because you are spending 8-10 hours a day with that person. So you want people that have that same kind of a mindset. And then adaptability is another one that I jotted down. You want people that are adaptable and flexible, because as we know, every day can change. You can have an awesome plan of the day as if you're in the military and you got it all figured out. And then Ted, Davis, Kaylee, we're all chiming in, hey guys, I know that we have a pretty full schedule, but is there a way that we can squeeze in this job? And you have some people, their brains just aren't built for that and they lose their minds. That's something I think you want to address on the front end during the interview, is how flexible are you? And not just as a question, but I think it's important that as we evolve as a company as well, that we do better and pass this along to others that may be watching. Do better with how you're bringing people on board, meaning don't just take their word for it. Talk to their previous employers. If you don't have some kind of a test, because there's all kinds of online resources you can use now to really weed out what a person says versus who they really are. Think of it as a psychological exam for future employees. They have lots of those now. Have them take those tests, and it does a great job of washing out the people that are just using words and just telling you what you want to hear versus the ones that's truly their DNA. The last thing I wrote down is, well, really two things, but a positive attitude and ongoing learning. Because if you don't have a positive attitude, it's going to be a problem, because you're going to have stressful days, long days. You're going to get hot. You're going to have that one teammate that you may dread working with. So you need to have someone that has a positive attitude no matter what. Doesn't mean you can't have a bad day here and there. But as a general rule, you want people that smile easily, especially because you're interfacing with customers all the time. And a smile is a welcome sign. So if you're hiring people that naturally just have a positive attitude versus very pessimistic, that's going to help you tremendously right out of the gate. And then continuous learning, again, I mentioned mentorship. Those are really important qualities to also look for. But the continuous learning thing is important because there's always something new to learn, whether it's how to price this kind of a job, proper moving technique, a new technique or a new strategy we figured out for maybe generating leads that even the guys can help with. All those things are so important. So That's what I wrote down for this topic. I hope it helps. But I think we have come a long way. And yet, what we are learning, Davis, is even 6.5 years, there's always more to learn. Always a month goes by and go, wow, it's crazy that we've been doing it this long and haven't done this. And I think that's also the importance of Facebook groups. Listen to your peers. I love our industry because it does seem like in general, 97% of our competitors, it's really a very, it's a friendly competitor. We pass along trade secrets. You don't really see that in the IT and the tech world. But in our industry, you see guys helping each other all the time, whether it's on a Facebook group or under other venues that maybe you establish, YouTube videos, just leaving comments. I see a lot of great comments where people are sharing, hey, this worked really well for us versus this didn't. We tried this and it failed. I love that about our industry, but always more to learn. But I hope where employees are concerned that you really do your due diligence and find the right people so that you're hiring right, not just churning through people. That is a constant headache if that's the way you're going to do business.
Yeah, what I would end with is everything that we've touched on is really, it's solved for if you have business owners that, if you and I could multiply ourselves and it was just the two of us in the field every day, we would have minimal headaches because those people would think about the business and what they're doing the way that we would, right? So when you hopped on that truck, you're naturally thinking, well, I've got an hour-long drive here, right? For whatever reason, I'm going from North Charlotte down to South Carolina. What can I be doing to be useful? What makes it really difficult to get the people that even people that you do hire that you think have the right genes, it's still really difficult because you've got a dispersed team. Like the industry we're in is trucks on the road away from a central location all day. Unlike IT services or really anything else where everybody reports into an office, like you can just kind of walk around and chat with people and see what's going on all the time. In home services, it's not. We've got guys on the truck today that we haven't seen for 8 to 10 hours. What are they doing? We think they're doing jobs. We hope they're prospecting in the field, right? You're spending 3, 4, 5 hours. That looked like a middle finger, by the way, not a. We hope they're doing these things, which you never really know. And yes, there's metrics and things you can put in place to, like, from a safe driving perspective, you can put things in place to scorecard that and figure it out and put dash cams and stuff. But like prospecting, no real clue. Unless you want to get super invasive and be like, hey, send me a screenshot of your phone. Like, did you prospect on Facebook? But we're never going to do that because it's just, that creates bad culture. But like, that's what makes the business difficult. And that's really what makes probably any business difficult is that the owners, you start something at some point in time and you grow to a certain size. And now you've got a much larger team than when you started. And you're like, well, how do I get more people to be like me? And that's the ultimate goal, is to be like you, but not be you. Because they'll never be you. They're not the owner of the company. So that's one thing I would end with. The last thing is, I think you summed it up without really saying it blatantly, but you want to hire really smart people. Like, that's what it is. Like, do not go out and just look for laborers that have low IQs and just want a steady paycheck. Like, you need folks that want to think strategically, that want to be incentivized for the work they do every single day, and they're impacting the top line revenue and also impacting your bottom line operational expenses. Like, those are the types of people you want. Ending it with this, like that navigator in the truck who's not driving, like, you have a really big responsibility all day long. Like, the driver is going to be driving for 3 or 4 hours every single day based on where their jobs are in the city. Like, you have to use that time to coordinate back with the call center, be very responsive, give pricing estimates if you're being asked to do so, prospect, call the clients that you're trying to schedule and be like, hey, you're on for 4 p.m. Can I move you up to 2 p.m.? It makes more sense for us. We're going to be in that area already. Like, you're wiping down the dash, you're cleaning things, you're making sure that your truck, is nothing's broken on it. Like, if you need to get a tire fix, like, you're the guy coordinating that. Like, you have a lot of responsibility, but not everybody sits in that seat and naturally thinks that way. They don't sit down in that seat and think, oh, I've got a lot to do here. They think, all right, break time. Like, they're just windshield time. Let's crank up the Morgan Wallen or whatever it is that they're listening to and having a good old time. But like, if you can figure out how not to have that type of person and have more of the outside the box thinkers, you're going to be golden. But that's what I would end with.
Man, you said one thing I just want to emphasize. When we say hire smart, here's the biggest challenge. When you hire smart people that check off virtually every box that we just discussed, just understand you're going to have to pay them more. And if we were hiring entry level or honestly just people that are happy to get a paycheck, they're the bottom of the hiring pool, that's a lot easier to find them. They're going to come out of your ears. When you put your ad on Indeed or ZipRecruiter, you're going to get 99%. And I'm serious, 99% are going to be those candidates. But you're looking for the needle in the haystack. You're looking for the 1%. You're looking for that person that likes manual labor, can sell, is good with customer service, has a clean driving record, not this criminal background, and is smart because they can take orders and run with it. They can essentially almost operate like it's their own business. That's really what we want. We want to empower our crew leaders and our managers to operate like it's their business. We want to give them that latitude. But again, therein lies the challenge, because when you do that, that means when you're paying those higher dollars for those people, your margins, your EBITDA, right? You're getting thinner and thinner and thinner. If you're Amazon, you can operate no problem with 10% margins, 10% EBITDA, because you're doing such volume. The volume is so big that 10% margin still represents billions of dollars. When you're a locally owned junk removal company with 2 locations, it's not so easy. You still need those 25, 30% margins or more. And that gets harder and harder when you're hiring better quality people. Just a heads up, that's the challenge. But our opinion is that's the way you want to do it, because in the long run, it is absolutely the way that you can build your business better, faster, and ultimately have the reputation that you're chasing, which is the premier provider in your industry,
Well, let me add this before we go. Like, our phone has gone off a few times, your phone and my phone, on this episode.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you that you're feeling probably the exact same way that I am. Like, man, am I gonna have to pause this episode right now so I can answer this call? Because we know how much that call is worth. It's worth what we've already spent for that person to be able to, for our phone to ring. But it's also worth however much the job is worth, obviously. Is it a $100 job? Is it a $1,000 job? Mm-hmm. And you and I are like chomping at the bit, like, oh, we hope our call center reps answer that. And luckily they have. But like, you and I naturally think that way. Like, we have to answer that phone. Like, have to. Or it's literally like I just threw $100 out the door and said, somebody go burn that thing.
That's right.
Whereas our call center reps naturally aren't thinking that way. They know how important it is to answer phone calls, and they're incentivized to answer as many as they possibly can and book as many jobs as they possibly can. But it's just different. It's just like an actual live example. Like, this thing's going off and I'm like, oh my God, we got to get it. So anyway.
Exactly right. Well, I hope this was a good topic, Davis. A lot of good information that you shared today. I appreciate it. Hopefully we gave the audience something to think about and to really just sharpen that blade. So we will see you guys next